All right.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Let's get started on our June 21st Finance and Administrative meeting. We do have a heavy agenda where I want to spend significant time affording the borough manager to review the EIT because it's a discussion that we had talked about, probably years ago, and there's been some significant changes that I want everyone, including the public, to be aware of. So if we can start with approval of F&A meetings, our last meeting. Anybody? Can I get a motion to approve? Minutes from June meeting?
I make the motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
Thanks. Perfect. Samantha, we've all had time to review your manager report, so I'll defer to you. Is there anything specifically you'd like to discuss with F&A? And then Barbara and Ira, if you have any specific questions about the manager's report.
In the interest of the EIT discussion, I have nothing to say about the manager report tonight.
Thanks. Barbara, Ira?
No question.
Okie doke. Same with treasurer's report. Any questions or comments for the manager?
The only thing I'll mention is we're halfway through the year and our projections show that we are currently slightly ahead of budget in a good way. So we'll do our best to continue that trend.
Fabulous. I don't see anyone on Zoom. Do we have anyone in the room for public comment?
There's nobody else in the room.
Okie doke. Let's move forward then with action items for Borough Council will be the scheduled bills. Are there any specific questions then? Barbara or Ira, you had been looking over those bills?
Nope.
Okay, hearing none, let's go right in then to 6.1, the website redesign and contract proposal. We all received a memo from Michelle that she wrote in conjunction with Ryan. And before we discuss this, Samantha, can you clarify when do we have Ryan till? When does his internship end?
Yeah, we have Ryan until August 19th. So yeah.
Okay, so wow. So he won't even be here for the completion of any type of web design. So that may inform our evaluation of the memo and the firm suggested by both Michelle and Ryan. Samantha, can I give you maybe the floor if you want to just kind of briefly go over the webpage redesign memo that Michelle wrote and then give council an opportunity to comment?
That would be great. Thank you, Cindy. So this memo was in response to some of the concerns that members of the committee raised at our last meeting that I thought were, pretty good comments and thoughts. And in addition, it was brought to me and Michelle's attention outside the meeting that there were some credibility issues with the firm that had made the presentation to her in terms of falsifying some of their portfolio and work. So Michelle, to her credit, went out and got a new set of quotes in consultation with Brian, who, as I think we talked before, has actually for his age especially, has a pretty strong background in web design. And the new quote is actually less expensive than the one before. Not only that, the person who runs the business is an Arbor Borough resident, and we have gone through and verified the portfolio. So, and then in addition to your packet, so kind of the delineation of duties here is Ryan has been working with Michelle on basically creating what they think the layout of the site should be in order to make it more user-friendly and more public-friendly. And they've been working on designing the specific pages, and then they would want to take that information and then give it to the web designer, who would actually make it happen on the actual internet for us. So that's the proposal. And again, the goal, as we talked about, is to make the website more easier to navigate for the public. So that's the proposal here tonight for your consideration and review and comment.
I just have one question and then I can pass it, Ira, to you and Barbara for comment. We'll just go round circle. Samantha, why Civic Plus was in the mix at some point, as this was a web redesign that really focused on municipality and function. Why did that org not make it to this memo?
Yeah, so I think Civic Plus, if I remember correctly, from talking to Michelle about it, I think their pricing was much higher than the other than the other firm. Thank you. Than the other firms considered. But I can definitely follow up and ask Michelle about that and get a confirmation for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let Barbara and Ira comment as well. But just comparing Civic Plus to what seemed to be some kind of branding type of companies and websites and companies, Civic Plus really looked like this was their niche, right? And to me, at a glance, it looked like it really was more user intuitive for municipal functioning. And wasn't sure, I didn't recall what that price tag was. But certainly would support investing in a quality web design, that will give us the infrastructure to just build and be able to edit in a way. Ira, I know you kind of work on this at Penn, so I suspect you have a more informed opinion and questions.
I don't spend a lot of time doing this sort of website design, so I would really defer to the office, get the option that makes the most sense to them. I do know that the only other piece of information I have, and I'm not suggesting that we stop bringing this up now, is that I think the Norwood Civic Association had a very good experience with a web designer recently who is quite affordable and seems to do a good job. So I'm not suggesting you change courses, but if somehow you don't feel as though you have the right person here for whatever reason, I'm just looking now at I don't know if Barbara knows, but it's listed here as Eitzen Creative.
Yeah, it's she's also local to Narberth.
Yeah, thanks for letting me know about that, Ira.
I couldn't remember her name, and I didn't have a chance to check it before it came. So thank you for finding it. Ira, do you have some other thoughts?
That's really it. I just think that, but if you think about what I just said, like here's a person with a linkage to Narberth who has some, reason to care about the outcome other than just like making money. But I think that's the way you describe this other firm.
Sure.
Yeah. Right. So it's all. I just don't have a lot of experience working with web designers at this scale. We do like these crazy fancy websites with, like linkages to all sorts of other systems and Google Analytics, all this stuff. Right. Where, so again, I think you're probably fine with who you have, but if somehow you needed another name, there is this, and you can just go to the norberthcivic.org and the footer, it has the information for this. What's his name? It's not Rich, but the fellow.
Andy Moser. Is that who you're thinking of?
The gentleman who organized it.
Andy Moser.
Yeah, Andy, that probably would give you rave reviews.
Yeah. He would, yeah.
Sorry, Barbara.
Okay, fine. I'll say a few things. So first, what I will say about the Civic Association's website is I just find it very user-friendly and really, I personally think it's a good model. I don't know, though, whether everybody else will, because I know website design is a very personal thing. Some people like one thing, other people like something else. So it's very, very subjective. The thought that occurred to me in looking at this, even though, yes, there's three different price points here, 7,500, 10,000, 12,000. They're not so far apart that they make me go, I wouldn't go with the highest one. And so what I'm wondering is, are we losing out something that we could get from one of the other cheap firms if we paid a little bit more? Because this is a major redesign. And so I feel like if we're already, it's kind of like you're doing a whole redesign of the kitchen and you're doing everything and you buy a cheapo refrigerator. It's like, why did you do that? I'm like, you're doing a whole new design. Should we maybe think about this in the way of, are we getting all the lead? And maybe we are, but it's hard for me to tell that from this. And it is a little hard to know, well, I mean, I don't know enough about these companies to know, are they the right fit for us? And I will admit, I did not spend time trying to fiddle around with them on their websites, but I feel like we could use a little bit more information on why you think one firm is better than another. I'm thinking of this, I know it's not the same kind of thing when we have work that we put out we did, but the scoring that I'm kind of thinking we probably should do something a little bit like this, not because the dollars are so big, but because this project is such a visible, forward-facing thing that we should get it right. I don't want people to go at the website. I want them to go, wow. That's my dream.
But I mean, I think the other thing with engagements like this with consultants, especially in this case where the work is builds on itself. If it's not working out, like stop it.
Well,
like have enough in the contract that like both parties can walk away. If it's because you'll know if they don't show up to meetings, or if they're like show up to meetings and they're not making any sense. Just give yourself an early exit.
Well, or if they propose something that you look at and go, that is not what we said we wanted. Because that could happen, and we don't want to do that.
Yeah. To your point, both of you, I do think perhaps maybe, we have the time we hired Ryan, an intern. I thought my understanding was he had some kind of basic coding and website skills that he would be able to begin to work on our webpage. And maybe I misunderstood the need for that skill set. But I agree with you both. And I want to be mindful of the fact that we have this intern for less than 4 weeks now. But I do think that Michelle's memo perhaps could use a little more data and information for us all. So we do understand that we're picking the right firm.
So maybe what I can do is actually maybe ask Michelle to zoom in to our next meeting and get some of this information you need, because frankly, she'll be able to answer some of these questions honestly better than I would be able to. And that way you can get the information directly from her. And in the meantime, she can gather some of this other information you're looking for. I do believe part of her proposal was, at least the lowest bid firm, was I believe there are 59 web pages in total that she wants to create. And this price of $7,500 would pay for 50 of them. And I do believe that Ryan was going to create 9 of them for us.
You said 18.
There we go, 18 of them.
Yeah.
So I can check with her if maybe that's something that, Ryan can still kind of, I might get myself in trouble saying this, but based on my own past experience, code is code. So it might be something where Ryan can go ahead and kind of get some of that work done, even if we don't actually select a firm until the 18th. And I guess the other thing I just asked the group to consider between now and next month is that site map that Ryan put together, and making sure that that kind of makes sense as well.
So Samantha, if I can just clarify, because by the time we meet again, Ryan will be gone. Is there an option just that we hired Ryan, he's had some coding and website, we really wanted that kind of niche skill set. Is there a medium where Ryan can see, how can I enhance the web page that we have now using some photos and utilizing his skill set? And then perhaps that next month, F&A can even evaluate that. And perhaps we don't need more, perhaps kind of personalizing the webpage and reorganizing information with his skill set may be enough. And if not, then Michelle can devote more time kind of thoroughly researching. Barbara, Ira, what do you think about that?
I think that's a good idea. I also think, we may find when they say, oh yeah, he's done a lot here that really makes it a more friendly site to visit. But I also think you may want to look at further work on it down the road, because it does require an awful lot of clicking to get where you want, and that is not good web design. So
Yeah, maybe he could start by like just taking the existing website. And like, I do know in WordPress that you can like, I do know how to move that stuff around to know that he should be able to do that. So maybe he could start by that sitemap that he put together in the packet for you all. You know, start by redoing the sitemap so the pages are easier to get to. Yeah, get some images together. Which, speaking of which, there is also a proposal, I think you all had mentioned last month, about a desire for a professional photographer for special events, as well as for maybe some work for the website. So Michelle also got some quotes for that. And again, found a borough resident who used to work for the Philadelphia Inquirer for decades as a photographer, who was willing to lend his services to the borough.
I think the most useful thing that Ryan could do is to tune the sitemap. Because if he starts coding individual pages and then the consultant comes on with a different like style, it's that. I mean, getting pictures is one thing, but like starting to code web pages and not give the new designer a chance to put their mark on it is a mistake. But having the sitemap, that's the first thing they're going to ask you for is the sitemap. So that's to have that, and that's the kind of thing that he can discuss with us, that he can discuss with people and get it right.
So I think the plan I'm hearing, which makes sense to me, is for the next month, we really rely on Ryan's skill set, because it's what we brought him in here for, to work on developing the site map, work on adding some photos to the website. And then in a month, we see where we're at and see how the website looks and works. And then we can decide if we need additional professional support.
Absolutely. I think that sounds like a great plan that we utilizes the resources that we have now. Barbara and Ira, are you okay with that?
Yes, I am. Although I do want to take a look at that sitemap now, because I wasn't sure. When I looked at it, I thought maybe that's the sitemap of the current website. And I thought, for the web page, and I thought, well, if that's true, what are we proposing to change it to? So I need to take a look at it and see, because I've always felt that as a non-council member, I would not know where to find stuff in there. So I'm not sure that even what we've come up with as a new sitemap is clear enough.
Yeah. But the answer would be from the folks that put the previous one together is they forget the stupid sitemap, just search. But that's not how people think.
Exactly.
That's not how everybody thinks.
Well, but you don't know the right term to search on.
No, I know, but I'm telling you, that was the consistent answer I got when I said it's hard to find things. We'll just type in search. Right. But I've done that, and it's not so easy to find things.
No, it doesn't get you. No, so we can't rely on that, and that's where I think some of these other websites, the examples that Michelle gave us, the Civics website. You look at those drop-down boxes, it's really clear where you go to get what you want. So I think we can think about that. So I'm more than happy to take a look at the site map and get some comments back.
Yeah, some perspective is definitely welcome.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, now's the time. And Samantha, so I'm assuming it's possible, he would be working on like a duplicitous web page, right? Like a parallel web page that wasn't public to change the sitemap and make those adjustments before it went live.
Unfortunately, with what I don't know the answer to that. My own what with WordPress is probably not. But honestly, Ryan may kick me later for saying this, but my recollection is that it's not very hard to really move the sitemap around. So I would say even if you do have changes, it wouldn't be the end of the world if something seems wonky to change it to something else.
Well, I'm certain he can make a copy of the current site and work on the copy.
I will.
There has to be.
Okay.
I mean, Ryan honestly know better than me.
I know. We're asking questions to people that don't know the answers. I bet you're right. Ryan's going to know this. All right.
I don't know that much about
how about this? If there is a way, I will ask Ryan and Michelle to find out if there is a way to do it that way, and we'll emphasize that they test it on something else first before doing it on the actual website.
The reason why it has to be is that's how you develop websites. Is you put something in test and then you move it to production.
Right. Yeah, we're trying to do it. Yeah,
anyway, let's not dwell on it.
Okay. That's great. Thank you for that.
You also
If we're comfortable with the plan ahead, we can move on to, we're not ready to discuss 6.2, Samantha, unless something changed since last we talked.
can I take us back to 6.1 for just a minute? The contract was not asking, do we want to move ahead with that right now? I'll say that I've had really good experience using Todd for personal stuff. So,
well, that's the picture.
Yeah, the photographer.
You can't go wrong getting more pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I'll tell you, we hired a local high school photographer for the skate park, and it was worth every penny because we got high quality photos that we used multiple times. So I don't know that has to go to full council for a vote. I think we can just charge the office. Samantha, I would hate to hold this process up. Does that need to go to full council, or can that be staff discretion? I mean, we're talking what, like $1,000?
Yeah. So yeah, I appreciate you saying that, and yeah, I would be fine with just again, given the timing of everything, us moving forward with Todd.
Yeah.
Ira, are you comfortable with FNA just giving the nod? Okay.
Yeah.
And then, if I may, actually, I did want to make just one note or question about 6.2, if I may.
Please.
All right. So, talking about more with Michelle and Kevin, I guess their thought was before, like, putting the time and money, like, if you want them to do it, they will. But before putting the time and money into the view from inside and outside the lobby, they at least want to make sure if we were, like, more moving in the direction that you wanted after the feedback we got last month. Like, if we're still completely off base, that's something I would want to know. But if you think that this is close enough that, you know, not necessarily you're saying yes to it, but if it's close enough to warrant the effort to make those renderings, that would be a huge help for us to know.
Certainly feel that way. This feels more like what I was envisioning, that you would come into a lobby area as opposed to a little box. And so this feels more like a lobby area to me. Mm-hmm. And you've got more view into the office. So you're like, oh yeah, I can see lots of people in there, and you know, not walled off.
Mm-hmm. Ira?
Right. So it wouldn't hold me up from doing a rendering, but I think one of the knobs to turn on this is how transparent that wall is at the top. Like,
so that would be actually, so, and again, you don't have a rendering, so you wouldn't know the answer to this, but what we were envisioning was like the first like 3 or 4 feet would be like drywall, and then it would be like either open or glass above that.
Okay, so
and it wouldn't go all the way to the ceiling either. It would be like, yeah.
Okay, so then I'm comfortable. Okay, it's just that the more it feels like open, the better I think it is. It doesn't feel like this is like, like little holes that you look through. And I think a lot of the stores you see are like that. They don't, I mean, I know, okay, so finally if you go to, to the 7-Eleven where they have you like a little thing, but,
right.
I mean, I think we as long as you can have visibility, I think it just feels better. And it probably feels better for the people working there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that this is definitely more in the conversation, the feedback. I appreciate you taking that. I personally would like to see, where your desks are, and collaboration is completely up to you. I mean, I don't think FNA or council should have any conversation or input on that. I would very much be interested in just seeing what that window and door looks like, to your point, Ira, what the visibility is. So really just that perspective to me is how much I heard you saying it's drywall, it's not to the ceiling anymore. When I say window, I'm not thinking those little bank teller that was in the first rendering. I would be interested in seeing that and then bringing it to full council to discuss that rendering.
Yeah. So what I'll do is I will ask for the rendering. And again, it could be you see the rendering and you still don't like it. And if that's the case, so be it. But it's good to know that maybe we're moving in the right direction. So I'll ask Kevin and Michelle to work on that for next month.
Yeah. And Samantha, just one quick comment is I appreciate kind of where there's now a place that, we had used the kind of rat cage scenario in the little rendering before, where looks like there are desks here, I'm assuming little tables, that there's really area for people to sit and have plants or whatnot. And I would just continue us to think about how we use Conway and the space upstairs expansively, because there are a lot of folks in that office. And I personally would support using additional funds if we had to renovate or use some of that space upstairs to make it more usable for staff or when the public come in. So for a later time, but particularly in the time, the age of our COVID world, being able to spread out and work comfortably, I think is important. So thank you for this. This is definitely our feedback. You've taken our feedback.
Yeah, but if you feel, and I think I've heard you say this before, that you have a desire for everybody to be, working in the same workspace, just like as a way to see what's going on. One of the ways that I've achieved the result of making the space better is to take like stuff, like files and things like that, and put them in the other spaces, so you don't have this office filled with, like paper and objects and things that could be elsewhere. Rather than remoting people, remote the stuff. If your desire is to have everybody, in one workspace. If it's not, well then, what Cindy said makes sense.
Yeah, and I'll talk more.
And I would leave that to you.
Yeah, I'll talk
agreed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed. I don't think the public can appreciate the amount of stuff that was in the office or upstairs, the paper record that you all are working among. So I think that's, to that point, like you adjust the infrastructure with support to make it an easier work environment. Okay, thank you. If we're done with 6.2, we'll look forward to that rendering of what it would look like for the public to look into that office and that specifically that one wall. We'll move next, and I'll ask Barbara to review updates on the volunteer application, please.
Sure. So we had at our last meeting, we had suggestions for changes to that the office made, and I took a quick look through that and noticed that there was one thing that I think got lost in the shuffle because I didn't write it in my notes. It was in an email. Was adding a question: do you agree to comply with the Sunshine Act? And how we might want to word that. Add that as also a question. Kind of tandem to the one that's, do you agree to comply with the financial disclosure? So personally, I think that's a good idea to do. I don't know if anybody else on the committee has strong feelings one way or the other. But I don't know. Any thoughts on that? No? Does that make sense to add to you? No.
I'll let me in depth in that.
Okay. Cindy?
Barbara, it was muffled. I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. Wow. I'm trying to be really loud. So adding the question, do you agree to comply with the Sunshine Act?
Oh, yes, of course. Yep. Perfect. Okay. Please. And then we did ask if John Walco or if PSAB had a little video, a workshop, something to be able to link that to, and that folks are going to sign off that they watched that or read that or whatever that resource is. I actually think that would be something important to add to the webpage too, honestly. What is the Sunshine Act? What does that mean? So the public understands that.
So the closest thing I could find, which is really a shame, like, I don't know, maybe the borough should let's make this video, but the State Office of Open Records does have like an FAQ page on the Sunshine Act that I thought was very volunteer, non-governmental experience friendly. So maybe we could at least link to that page.
That's great.
And yeah, we can add a link to that to the borough website as well.
That's great. I do wonder if John Walco would be interested in creating, again, not a high production. It could even be a video Zoom recording of just 5 minutes, what that means. I don't know if that complicates matters. I imagine that may be something his firm would actually be interested in having.
Yeah, I can ask Don about that.
But, I think that while all that's important, I think perhaps the most important thing is when there's a new chair of a committee, that someone sit down and spend 10 minutes with the person answering their questions. I recently did this with David Bordeaux for the NIDA, because, he was very gracious to take on that position. And so, I went to the first meeting, and I sat down with them, and I told them, basically, what the situation was. I mean, that was a little bit unique. It had a lot of rules, but I'm just saying, in general, it wouldn't be so bad to have an orientation, a brief orientation about, and an opportunity so that he knows that the chair, he or she knows who to ask if they have questions.
Yeah, Ira, I think that's a great idea, and actually kind of supports an agenda item I'm going to add, which is just following up on that volunteer appreciation of committee and commissions and boards that Michelle Patanopoulos had the idea. She and I talked about it in the spring. We thought the fall would be a good time to do that. Perhaps we'll have the volunteer application form. I am actually going to write to Kilkenny Law Firm to ask if they'd be interested in sponsoring some sort of light refreshment thank you volunteer event. We could, again, introduce the forum and ask, really kind of put that mentorship and that one-on-one meeting into the process of how people get onboarded to formally volunteering.
That's a great idea.
Well, thank you, Barbara, for your work on this. And thank you for the office. I'm excited to get this up and running. Are we prepared to bring this to full council then at our next meeting?
You don't mean tonight.
No. I'm sorry. Like our next month's meeting. Yeah. Okay, great. Samantha, can we add that on to next month's agenda?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then if they're not, I'm sorry, the grant update.
Yeah. So just very briefly, I started filling in, how the different grants would tie into the comprehensive plan. And I just wanted to show you all the progress I've made on that. And again, make sure that this format works, or if there's a better format you can think of, then I'm certainly open to doing that.
I just was amazed at how many different places a particular project showed up under the comprehensive plan. That just really, when I first opened it, because of course it becomes a little minimized. And I thought at first there was some garbled text in there in that box, because it was just so full of letters and numbers. And then when I blew it up, I said, oh my gosh, look at all those references in the comprehensive plan to one grant that we're applying for. So I really appreciate that, because I think it really helps bolster the case for applying for a particular grant, to see, oh my goodness, it's going to address so many concerns in the comprehensive plan. I didn't even think about it from the standpoint of, is there a better way to report that? So I don't have any thoughts on that.
At the risk of cluttering your spreadsheet, I'd love to see a column for, due date, or submission date, and potential award date.
So there is a column where the application is due.
I don't see it on the thing.
I think
I'm sorry.
It's on the, yeah.
Oh, I'm seeing. Okay. I'm sorry. I was looking at the.
Oh, no problem.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. So you have. So the answer is that you have it. It's just that the spreadsheet is so wide that yeah. Oh, good. But I think that it might be useful, in the first set of columns, which is kind of like a summary, to have the date it would potentially be awarded, right? Because that says, oh, okay, I see. This is just. I get that, because I don't know if everybody's going to make their way all the way to the end, but at least, on the sort of summary sheet, you have some sense of, when it's likely to happen. I happen to know the answer for some of them, but.
Yeah, I can have that.
Yeah. It's been good fun. It's quite detailed. Okay, I'm sorry.
Samantha, with looking at just projecting of all the grants ahead, we discussed really what we all agreed was a sage investment of looking at some support and helping with narrative and help writing this grant with information that you could use again. Have you thought any more about that and how you could plug that in, particularly to some of these upcoming opportunities?
Yeah, so, I guess we're actually already kind of doing that. Council later tonight is going to talk about a multimodal grant application. And the planner who is working on the Town Square project, I actually contracted to do like 90% of the work on this multimodal grant application. So I'm really appreciative of this committee and council giving me that opportunity. I really think it's going to be a really good return on investment for the borough. And I think as we continue to develop a grant strategy, it'll be something where we can even better take advantage of those resources and better plan those resources.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you. Not that this was a formal grant that the borough office put through, but rather something that I worked with the Civic Association and the county on. It was for an idea grant looking at how to create a new housing security program, and we did not get funded for that. However, Kaylee Silvers at the Housing Authority office, the Housing Access office rather, is pretty confident that this is an idea we can still move forward on in partnership with the Civic Association that would require nothing of council or staff, but rather is a blessed project. And we're going to meet in September with the Civic Association and the county to brainstorm on, despite not getting those funds, we can forge ahead. Okay. So if there's nothing more about the grants, I'd like to move along in 40 minutes to give us a break before our meeting to really talk about, again, the earned income tax. Folks Barbara and Ira, before you were on FNA, this is something actually Fred did an enormous amount of research on per my request and suggestion of why we didn't have an EIT. We were one of 2 municipalities in Pennsylvania, I believe, that did not have an EIT. And essentially, Fred did a bunch of research and found that at that time, if we did, in fact, have an earned income tax, we would have, the school board could have taken it and we would have imposed it on Lower Merion, which would have been useless. That has changed. So we've reevaluated this opportunity. And I have to say, I thought it was a really interesting opportunity before Samantha even schooled us on a situation we were in that was really precarious, and looking at how we as a municipality are dependent on one revenue stream of having this property taxes. And it's fiscally, I don't know, Samantha, is irresponsible is too strong of a word, but it is not wise to not diversify how we are securing the borough. So with that, I'd like you, Samantha, to ask to please present. You did an enormous amount of work on this. You did an enormous amount of networking on this. This is a conversation that we're not deciding tonight, but really just teeing up and starting that for both council and the community.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction and for the opportunity to present on this issue tonight. So as Cindy mentioned, Narberth Borough, I found, was one of 3 municipalities in Montgomery County that does not have an earned income tax. And even when I was in Bucks County, and the vast majority of municipalities there have one. I forget what the number is for the whole state, but the vast majority of municipalities in the state, I feel confident in saying, have an earned income tax. And I would be in favor of the borough creating one for a variety of reasons. The first one, as Cindy mentioned, being diversifying our income sources, kind of similar to how in your personal finance, how you diversify your investments, the borough should really be doing the same thing. And it is a strategy that the Governmental Finance Officers Association recommends. The second reason I'd really like to see the borough implement earned income tax is I feel like an earned income tax in some ways is more progressive than property taxes or business privilege taxes, in that it scales with income. There's an exemption for people who are low income. There are exemptions for people who don't have earned income. So that would be folks on Social Security, folks on a retirement pension, people on disability. Whereas property taxes, you know, it doesn't matter if you're in those situations, you have to pay them. Not only that, the third reason I would be in favor of it is property taxes don't really, in Montgomery County, don't really, and then most of PA don't really scale well with inflation. Properties are only reassessed when some sort of major change happens to the property. So what happens each month is the county gets a list of our building permits that we've issued, and they look at the permit. If it's like an addition or something like that, then they'll send the tax assessor out to reassess it. You know, up until the recent development we've had in the borough, I think in past budget presentations, prior borough managers have rightly pointed out to council that property tax revenue growth has been, I think, like around 1% or maybe less than that per year. And the costs that the borough has, unfortunately, you know, do not stick at the scale like that. So earned income taxes, as people, you know, as wage growth, I mean, wage growth in America is a whole nother can of worms, but generally wage growth does, you know, scale faster than the assessment of property. So it'd be a way for the borough to keep up with revenue in terms of inflation better than property taxes allow us to. One of the other reasons that I would be in favor of it is in terms of the actual impact to borough residents. And I hope it's not too confusing. I tried to kind of make a yes/no flow chart to determine who all would actually be paying any new taxes. So like I already mentioned, there's I feel like a fairly significant chunk of the borough that doesn't pay it right now and would not pay it because, again, they're on Social Security, disability, retirement pension, unemployed, so on and so forth, retired, what have you. Another segment of folks in the borough who would not see any changes to their taxes are people who either work in Philadelphia, in which case I don't want to bore everyone here, but there's a legal loophole where Philly keeps all the earned income tax, even if we have one of our residents that work there. So people working in Philly already pay an earned income tax and would not pay anything different if the borough had one. The fourth group of people who would not see any changes to their taxes are people who work in a municipality where there already is an earned income tax, and that other than Philly. In that case, the borough would start getting that money, and the person paying it wouldn't see any changes in their taxes. It would just come to the borough instead of the municipality they work in. The fifth group of people who aren't borough residents, who would start paying an earned income tax to us, as long as Upper Marion Township and Lower Marion Township do not have an earned income tax, any of their residents who work in Narberth Borough would start paying an earned income tax to the borough. And again, are not borough residents that would be impacted by it.
Yeah, I got lost there. Why would someone in Lower Marion pay Narberth?
If they work in Narberth.
If they work in.
Yeah, and it's only because those municipalities don't have an earned income tax of their own.
And just remind me what we're talking about, like 1%.
It is, sorry, yes. I should have said that at the beginning. Sorry, it's 1% of earned income. And like I said, there is a $12,000 low income exemption as well in state law.
One other clarifying question, and I apologize if I somehow missed this, but you're referring to a flow chart and document, but I don't recall seeing the document.
Yeah, it's not in the packet, but maybe we can add that in the minutes, and we'll send that out.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that, quite frankly, Fred did call me and we had a conversation about this, but it's a little bit challenging to react to a flow chart. Because one of the things I said in my conversation with him is I'd like to see, for these pick 8 sample cases, how it will impact them. And it sounds like that's in the document.
Yeah.
So
yeah, sorry about that.
Okay. I mean, I'm not in like a super rush to do this. I'm just saying it's going to be difficult for me personally to have anything but like a high level conversation about this until, I see a little bit. I do have some comments, but I don't want to cut you off.
Sure.
Samantha, can we put that on the screen now? I'm trying to find it. Could you project it up if you have it handy?
Let's see.
I think I have it. Hang on.
I mean, Cindy, I don't know that I necessarily want to do that. I don't want to sound like, my predecessor, but I would like to spend a little time reading it before I.
No, I understand. But if Samantha has it handy, I think it would be nice just for even the public and then have the record. We can project it quickly. If not, we'll get that out. And we'll definitely put it in the minutes. This is the first of a conversation.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to see that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
just 1 second, just so it's on the recording, and then I think for the people in the room and maybe even the people on Zoom, it might be tough to see, but I'll just share it for a second.
Okay, and then I'll ask that we just attach that with the minutes, so it's on public record. Thank you for that.
Yeah, so the last point I wanted to make about this is that, to answer a question that council and members of the public may have, is, well, I guess I'll say what I would want to use this money for, and then we can talk about a couple other tangential issues. So what I would like to do, again, to make our taxes fairer and more progressive in the borough, is use a portion of this money to create a homestead exemption in our borough. Actually, very few municipalities in Montgomery County have a homestead exemption. And a homestead exemption, just so we're all on the same page and the public is for someone who lives in the property that they own. They would be allowed to deduct, depending on what level the borough set, up to a certain amount of value of their property from the amount they pay in property taxes. And I saw in most municipalities it ranged from like $8,000 to $40,000 of assessed value. So I have a proposal, I believe in the memo, where we would do a homestead exemption of, I believe, of $20,000 for borough residents. So for anyone who lives in the home that they own, not a rental property or something like that, they would be able to take $20,000 off their assessment value. And with the borough's current property tax rate, that would be a savings of about $200 per year on those residents' property taxes, which would also offset for folks that would then have to start paying the earned income tax, would offset a chunk of what they pay for that. Which again, I think would, and again, for people who are on fixed incomes, they would also get that benefit. And I think it would make it a lot easier, as we talk about aging in place and issues like that, a lot easier for people who want to continue to live in their home here in the borough to be able to do that even after they're retired and such. So that's the main focus of it. The other focus, I will admit, this tax would generate some new revenue from the borough. There would be some people who do not currently pay it. And in addition to the people who are paying it somewhere else that we would start getting it from, there would be a certain number of borough residents, admittedly, who would be paying, some additional tax in the form of earned income tax. There will be people who have earned income. There'll be people who make enough earned income that they don't qualify for exemption. And there'll be people who make enough that both the low income exemption and the homestead exemption didn't cover, the full value of the earned income tax they'd have to pay. So really the people, who are in some of the best financial position in the borough would be paying. And I mean, just full disclosure, so you all kind of know that I'm like, not being a hypocrite here. As a Lower Marion Township resident, I would be someone, for example, who would, be paying this tax now who didn't before. But even saying that, I, still think it's the right thing to do and such. That new revenue, the infrastructure committee has started talking about, and this committee's talked about as part of budget development, the outstanding infrastructure and capital needs that the borough has. I would like to take the new revenue generated from an earned income tax and dedicate it to infrastructure projects in the borough, so we can really finally catch up on, and then maybe in some cases get ahead of these infrastructure issues we have. I mean, if you look at all the different reports we've done between the KCBA study, the road paving plan, I think, next year we're going to work on some master park planning. But the thing about infrastructure is, it's something to the naked eye you can see. I mean, you can see our parks, you can see our roads, you can see our, municipal properties. If there's a sewer backup or a sewer, pipe burst, unfortunately, that's very obvious. If there's flooding on your property because the stormwater system can't handle it, those are things you see that affect residents' lives every day. And I think this money could be a great opportunity for us to solve those problems for borough residents.
And Samantha, if I can just comment, this is one of the points that you came up that you discussed with us. It might have even been as early as your interview of just really looking at equity in budget and municipal planning. And, we have inherited really decades of deferred maintenance. And I think it's irresponsible for us then as a council to continue to kick that can down the line. Infrastructure at some point is going to break. And to your point, everyone is going to notice that. And I think that you have now offered us with this EIT plan a really equitable way to address some of the really critical needs in the borough. I really appreciate your work for this. I also think you are the person to help shepherd us into this process if that's the direction we go. And I am curious, could you even suggest, with not holding you to any of these expectations, what a timeline? If council were to say, yes, this is something that we want to move forward on, this is not something that would happen next week, but what would be that process and timeline?
Sure. So the way it works with earned income tax collection is the borough wouldn't have its own earned income tax collector. It's actually set at a county level. So there's a county committee that holds public meetings that decides on who the earned income tax collector is and does periodic reports about how collections and issues related to earned income tax are playing out. So I've reached out to Berkheimer, who is the Montgomery County earned income tax collector, to ask about that. So the actual mechanic to do it is Borough Council would pass an ordinance, and that would follow the same process that we would on any other ordinance. Because Berkheimer already collects earned income taxes throughout the rest of the county. Of course, again, with the exception of Upper Marion and Lower Marion, you don't have one. And also collect the local service tax, which I touch on in my memo as well. They already have a pretty robust, database of employers and employees in the county. And so, they would already have that information in terms of setting it up and figuring out who needs to pay it and which, to the borough and all that kind of thing. So, the ordinance approval process, as we know, generally takes a month or two. Council has to approve advertising an ordinance, and then at their next meeting has to actually approve the ordinance once it's had at least 7 days in a paper of local distribution. And then I would imagine there'd be another, I can confirm again with Berkheimer, but I got the impression that it would be about a month or two of setup. So I would say that if this fall, as part of our 2023 budget process, if Borough Council decided that they wanted to do this and pass such an ordinance, I would say, by the end of October and November, we would be in a position for the 2023 budget to start collecting this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So I'll ask Barbara, then Ira, if you have questions or comments. And then I'd like to recommend, given the timeline of where we are in the budget season, that after we ask some of these initial questions and comments, that we move the conversation over to full council. And if Ira, to your point, if you're not ready to make a recommendation, yay or nay, I would still suggest that we put this on next month's budget just to have a full council review and conversation. But Barbara, if I can pass the Zoom to you with any questions or comments.
Sure. I think this is a great idea. I mean, when I was on council the first time, EIT was talked about a little bit, so I realized it was a no-go because of this strange thing that the school district could get part of the money if you put it in place. So it didn't seem worth it. It wasn't going to get us around. And so I'm really relieved that someone somewhere changed the state regulations. I don't know who that person is, but I'd love to thank them. Because to me, this makes perfect sense for all the reasons you outlined, Samantha. But I think that the one that resonates the most with me is that someone who spent her whole career working in the city of Philadelphia, but living in Narberth and not having any of my city wage tax going to benefit Narberth, and knowing that I had fellow residents who worked within Narberth and had to pay no wage taxes, really was like, this is not fair because they would at least be benefiting the borough. And so I just feel like we're in this world where we're surrounded by municipalities collecting our income tax. We should be doing that too. It's only responsible of us to do that. So to me, this makes perfect sense. And yeah, if we can have it in place, and start getting the additional revenue next year, I think that's wonderful. And I love your suggestions of what to do with it, especially infrastructure, because it's clear we need to do that. And the less we have to borrow for that, the better.
Mm-hmm. Ira?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of questions to be asked, and I think there are going to be a lot of people in the public asking a lot of questions, especially the guy, not myself, but I worked in Philadelphia, the guy who makes $5 million a year, okay, and is all of a sudden, going to be giving $15,000 more in taxes, okay? So, I mean, I'm not saying whether they should or shouldn't pay more taxes, but I'm just saying it's going to be a difficult conversation to have with that person, okay, on the law. Number two, there's kind of inequity is too strong a word, but it's sort of oddity that, like, I would contribute no additional money. In fact, my property taxes would go down, right? And I'm giving that money to Philadelphia, and I'm not giving a dime more to Norbert, but I'm benefiting from all the things that we're doing. And I realize that you can't change the world. You can't make Philadelphia give us some money. I get that, but there's just something that, like, about that just seems, I don't want to say unfair, but not quite right about that scenario. Like, if I'm that guy who makes that $5 million, okay, it's like, well, why am I paying that? Because if all these people, we got all that money from the Philadelphia people, like, that, we wouldn't need as much to him. So I'm not saying that there aren't answers to that set of questions. I'm just saying I think it's going to be hard to explain and be a little hard to justify that irregularity, because I don't want to call it inequity, because I'm paying the 4% to somebody, so it's not as though I'm not paying, it's just not going
way more than 1%.
Yeah. Ira, we pay way more than 1%. So if I can ask Ira, if you can look over that memo.
I think Ira has another point.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
So the other thing is that there's a lot of moving parts to this, with like the homestead credit and the property taxes going down and this tax. And that's why I really want to see these different scenarios, because it's just that's the way I think. I just have to see, okay, I see this set of people are going to be affected this way, this set of people are going to be affected that way. And then my final point, and then I'll let you go, Cindy, is 1% like that's it? That's the only choice we have? Or that's something we pick?
So 1% is the maximum.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So potentially we could do less or even phase it in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I know we don't get as much money right away, but we wouldn't lower property tax by as much. But as a way to, a lot of times when you make these changes in methodology, you phase them in over multiple years, so the impact on one person on certain set of people within the great. So, we don't have
to consider that.
But I would just have to be the call.
It is possible.
That's it, I'm done.
Great. Well, if I could maybe ask Ira if you're comfortable spending some time with that flow sheet. We'll put it in the minutes. And Samantha, perhaps if we can please add this to the next council meeting agenda for full council to discuss. And Ira, if you can bring those questions, because I do think this is a big enough conversation. I don't want to take a vote right now to saying that we endorse this at all, but rather this is one of those agenda items that I think we do advance right to full council, given that we're interested and supportive enough that it makes sense to do that. And council can take a look and we can have some of these larger conversations at the table. And I think there would be a tremendous amount of community education and warning about this. Samantha saying this is where those dollars will go. It's not going to pensions or it's not going to someplace that you can't see, but really being able to identify where those funds will go, I think will be really helpful. Because to your point, we can all see falling down infrastructure at Narberth Park and the sewer and the sidewalks, et cetera, stormwater. It's going to help frame the conversation. And perhaps, we partner again with the Civic Association and do those listening sessions and there's community conversations. Perhaps this is one that shouldn't just happen at the council table. I was going to add to the agenda an idea that we've been talking about for years of setting out kind of like a monopoly money budget activity that would require nothing from the office, but rather asking the Civic Association if they'd be interested in co-hosting an event where, let's say, everybody got $1,000 in monopoly money. We said, okay, take 460 of it, put it over into the police fund, put, 20 of it in this fund, and then play with that money. We could do things like, okay, 114 Elmwood's up. Guess what? You all get an extra $20 this year. We could introduce the earned income tax that way as well, of just saying, how municipal finance utilizes the resources they have available to meet the needs of the community. So that may also be a community event that could help introduce this potential new tax approach.
Samantha, do you have any, or does anybody have any initial thought on how to, address that issue I brought up about the people who don't have to pay the tax? They make a lot of money, but they don't have to pay the tax if they're in Philly. Other than the obvious, like what are we paying?
So you're talking about people in Philly?
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, in other words, like, let's say I make like $1 million a year and I work in Philly, I give nothing to the offer. In fact, my property taxes go down. As opposed to if I don't work in Philly, I'm going to be giving $10,000 more than normal. So
I feel like that is an oddity. I appreciate this, and we're not going to find a perfect system. I hope in your example, the person that makes $5 million, the $1 million, and it goes to Philadelphia, perhaps says, "Well, while my EIT goes to Philadelphia, they really need it too, but I'm going to give a bigger donation to the Narberth fireworks this year." I'm not sure that we can control those individual inequities, and I think for this one, when I weigh this, that still is not a compelling reason not to move to an EIT because there's so many different benefits to that.
But I guess like my primary point, the theme of what I'm saying is, and you mentioned it, but we've got to get this conveyed to people in a way that they can relate to it. Now, I tell you my experience, okay, I've only been doing this for like a half a year. Like, people don't react well to stuff like this.
So
in this town, they do not do well with this.
I guess what I would say, and some of my own political beliefs are going to bleed into what I'm about to say.
I share your political beliefs.
Is that, that person who makes $5 million a year, I have a sneaking suspicion their property tax bill isn't much different than someone who makes $500,000 a year or someone who makes $100,000 a year in Marburg. So I guess my response to that person would be, on the flip side of that, how is it fair when you're making $5 million a year and someone else is making $100,000 a year, that you're paying the same thing in property?
Yeah, those aren't the two I was comparing. I was comparing the guy who's giving the money to Philly.
I guess I would say that is unfortunate that the borough can do.
No, I get it.
Right.
And there is a tremendous number of people in this region that are in that same situation as that person. So we are the outlier in not having an EIT in the Collar County.
Except Lower Merion.
But if you look at if you look at, I'm talking Delaware, Chester.
There's 3.
Monco, and then Bucks, thank you, I'm like, blanking. They all have EIT. So the fact that we don't have one is just an oddity. And so that to me is not a compelling reason to not put it in place.
Yeah.
Here's what I think might help us as we look through this. I'm guessing we must have some kind of data on how many people we think are going to have to pay this tax and how much money this tax is going to generate.
Right. And Samantha, you've actually provided some really nice estimates.
I really wonder if it comes down to be that many people once all is said and done.
So I don't have the numbers memorized offhand, but I need Cindy echo this as well. All those numbers are actually in the memo that I provided. Yeah,
they are. Yep.
So yeah, that was
in the council. I think it's in the full counts. No.
Oh,
so Ira, why Samantha pulls that up? I will say
why I just realized as we started talking about this, I didn't think to ask. There was nothing in the packet about this item, but I thought maybe that was because there wasn't anything that needed to be in the packet for it. So,
all right, I will absolutely first thing tomorrow we'll distribute that memo.
Super.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I guess I got that via email.
Like 800 people? Or are we talking, 300 people? I mean, it may not be. And are we really talking about somebody who lives and works in Narberth and makes $5 million here? I want to know what their business is.
Yeah. And Samantha, while you pull that up, Ira, if I could just respond to something you said, and I think I appreciate you saying I've been at this for 6 months. We're never going to make 100% of the people happy. And I don't think that we can guide the borough with the assumption of how are we going to even make the most people the happiest, if we have to do what's the most responsible and equitable. And I think this meets that. There will absolutely be people that are unhappy. There always will be. And they're often the loudest, as you know. But I don't think it's representative of the borough. And when we bring and make evidence-based decisions, I feel comfortable making and supporting that. And I do think that's what Samantha has really teed up here.
Sure.
So this paragraph right here, this is from Bart Clymer. They estimate that 40% of residents of Narberth are employed and thus would be potentially have to pay their income tax. And then it mentions the fact that if you work in the state of Delaware, city of Philadelphia, that will be going to them. And they estimate that to be 20% of that 40% of people.
Oh, only 20% of those folks are working in Philadelphia or Delaware. Interesting. I would have thought it was higher than that. Okay. It's not an insignificant number of people at all, but I still come back to they're like almost everybody in the state is paying an earned income tax to their local municipality. Why would we feel that, I guess that it's not so much, we want to do what everybody else does, but is there a good reason for us to be an outlier? And I'm not seeing a good reason at this point. I can see at one time there was a good reason when there was this restriction with the school district, but now I don't see the good reason. So.
Barbara, that's the exact question I was going to ask in line of thinking. I am thinking of the question is not why should we do an EIT, but could we defend why we are not? I can't answer that. I don't have an answer for that.
I don't either. I can't come up with here's the reason why we should not have one. Other than some people don't want to have to pay the tax. Well, lots of taxes I don't want to have to pay, but I do. So.
Okay, so sorry, Ira.
For the record, I'm not opposed to this tax. It's just about how it's rolled out in a way that we don't have a mutiny in our head.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And you know what, which is why I think if you're both in support of that, we'll ask Samantha to take all this information. And I'm sorry, I read it in the email and just assumed you had it when Samantha, Fred, and I were kind of teeing this up, is for that to go in the minutes packet as well as distributed for council to have this larger conversation. If council does support moving forward, then F&A can move right in at early September of setting up, outside of the formal meeting, how we're going to have information sessions, what type of FAQ we're going to put, perhaps even a 2 or 3 minute explanation video that we can put and distribute. Because I don't want people to be surprised there. I think that's an important point, and we can certainly roll that out.
Yeah, absolutely. So Cindy, this would come to council at the August business week?
I would like to do that. Yes, I think it's important enough, and given the timing, that we should have the larger conversation in August. I mean, and then we couldn't. Gosh, Samantha, walk me through this. Then, if we agreed in August, could we agree to advertise, vote September, roll out October? Is that how that would go?
I don't think I can move that fast. I think it would be probably advertise October and consider approval in November.
Okay. And that works for you in line of budget season.
Because I envision, and actually I'm glad you mentioned that because I want to reach out to council soon about this. I would want to do 2 budget work sessions with council, one in September and one in October. So I'll follow up with council about that. And at our next meeting on August 18th, I want to start talking about what I'm seeing of the budget for 2023.
Okay. With 6 minutes left, I really want to give us 10 minutes to use the restroom and stretch our legs. I tried to be helpful and sent out requests to community partners and council chairs to say, hey, if you have any requests or information or questions for the budget, can you please send them to me? I'll organize and send them to Samantha. And despite some of my best nagging, I did really only get 2 responses. So that was not incredibly helpful. So I think a lot of the input for community groups and council members will happen during this process. Do you think, I guess I'm asking Barbara and Ira, do you think having some sort of, you try to manipulate or control the budget? I mean, clearly I'm an educator, so this is how I do my classroom. Do you think that there is a value to host an event like that with the community?
I always think there's value in educational things like that. I just wonder if people have the bandwidth for that this year. One of the things that I've noticed over the years, because I've been paying attention to council activities since 2014, 2015, is that there were some years where people were really engaged and came and the borough manager made budget presentations and people came and asked questions and it was very interactive. And then there were other years where it was like nobody had any questions and nobody came. So I guess I'm not saying don't do it, but I wouldn't be surprised if you get very few people attend. I just think this might be a year where people are just not engaging in those kinds of things as much as they might have this year.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. I feel as if people are slowly re-entering.
Yeah, but
okay. And then maybe if we do move forward with an EIT, we focus on really targeted conversations about that new tax and community outreach. Okay.
Actually saying that, I think there's other things that are probably more important to be doing educational stuff on that, and things around school like Sabine and just other activities in the borough that it might be more important to have education.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I know we have, Samantha has mentioned when there's something kind of significant to report about the bridge when we get started. Samantha, you mentioned wanting to have a town hall for that. Okay, Ira, do you have anything else to add to that?
I'm all about it. I'd love to have town halls where people can ask their questions and we can do a little myth debunking. It's all great, but I don't know that, playing that hypothetical. I just think that would appeal to it would be very effective for a very small percentage of the community. Okay. And really, the more we can do to, I spend most of my time in Norwood talking to people debunking myths. So So to the extent that myth debunking can be done in an organized way, it would be great, because it gets a little tiring one-on-one for a while. And I'm not going to reach anywhere, like any significant percentage of the population. It's just the myth. And by the way, it's almost always the same myths.
Yeah, no, they're popular myths. I hear you. And actually, to your point, Ira, I was socializing Narberth, and someone said, "Hey, talk to me about this Safe Sabine." I said, well, did you know that we resolved to maintain or increase? No, they had no idea about that. And I said, did you look at the information on the webpage? Are you comfortable with 13% of your property taxes going up for that park to park? That's the estimated. And they said, whoa, no, where was that buried in the information? I said, oh, it's there under the Sabine. And the person said to me, and I don't think they were wrong, that radically changes my opinion and my perspective on this. Could you do, they said, even a 2 to 3 minute video just explaining those points and put it out there? I don't know if that would come from FNA, because there's more detail from just that 13%, although that was an incredibly important data point for this person. But, Fred did a series of these little 2-minute vignettes, actually, when we ran, that were really popular. I do wonder if that's something that, as we move on this radical change, if people don't have the bandwidth to come and have conversations, we should still have these town halls, but maybe offering 2 or 3 minute little, let me explain this topic to you, and via either the civic page or link to the webpage is not a terrible idea.
I'm all about the myth busting, because I even do it on the beach.
Yeah.
Oh, you're from Narberth. Yeah. What about those rats?
I could friend from Blackman who asked me what the rat problem is about.
It is funny, and I have to say, ending on that fun note, because I think the moral of the story was, no, there's in fact not more rats. There's always been more rats. There was a big rat media conversation at the start of COVID. The bunnies is fascinating to me. I'm like, now I do see more bunnies, and that would be a fun story and have some truth behind it. Okay, it is 7:20, which was my end goal. If there's nothing else for the good of the group, I'd ask that we end here to give us a few minutes to stretch. Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect.